So Samir, please let us know when to start, because you are the master.
Yeah, good evening,
You have
everyone.
the
Pradyumna, we can start. It's live on YouTube now, so we can get started.
Fantastic. So good evening, good morning, good afternoon to all the friends who are joining from different parts of the world. And today it's we were just talking about it, and Amit will probably elaborate on it. It has become truly Vishwa Manthan, not just because we have people joining in from different parts of the world, but also many people from different backgrounds, different communities, and as I said, Amit will mention this, who call this event our own event or their own event, and it is truly that way. It is our own event. We started Vishwa Manthan as a platform about 18 months ago. And we have been truly blessed. In last 18 months, we have had dignitaries and experts from so many different fields share their knowledge with us. We have been blessed to listen to them, interact with them, and learn from them. And that's all this whole platform is about. Let me take a minute to talk about this platform, because we have so many new people joining for the first time. We set up this platform with a vision statement that we want to create a platform that connects and brings together professionals from around the world for mutual prosperity. When we talk about prosperity, we don't talk only about prosperity in terms of wealth, in which what goes in your bank or in your pocket, but also mental wealth, intellectual wealth as well. And we, as I said, we have been truly blessed with it in last 18 months with so many speakers. Our core values are friendship. So that's the biggest community, or that's probably the only community we care much about. We want to connect friends together. It's all about candor or openness, and it's all about inclusiveness. We want to make sure that we become one, even though we bring different aspects and diversity in experiences, backgrounds. I think that color makes all of us richer. In last 18 months, we have had experts coming from health and education, who talk to us. We have academicians, we have got scientists who have come and spoken to us. But today is a special day because we have someone who we are really fortunate to have on our platform for the second time. And we are fortunate because he's somebody that we look up to in awe, in admiration and respect. But we believe that he looks at us also in equal measures with affection and kindness. So without much further ado, I would hand it over to Amit to introduce this very special guest of ours for today and kick off the session.
Thank you so much, Pradyumna. Very, very beautifully introduced. और आपने सही कहा कि विश्व मंथन is of the friends and for the friends. That's very important. To introduce this special guest, Pradyumna, you know my love for poetry, and one of the poets or shair that I love a lot is Allama Iqbal. Iqbal Saab ne ek sher jo kaha hai, that is, I think, epitomizes what I would like, the way I think about this human being, this person. Iqbal Saab says, "Hazaron saal Nargis apni benuri pe roti hai." हजारों साल नरगिस अपनी बेनूरी पे रोती है, बड़ी मुश्किल से होता है चमन में दीदावर पैदा. Benuri is misfortune, and Didavar is somebody who is a visionary. So, ladies and gentlemen, friends, I present to you Shri Kundapur Vaman Kamathji. We all lovingly call him KV Kamath Sir or KV Sir. Doesn't really need any introduction, especially not from me, but just for those who would like to know a few trivia, some details. He was a former chief of the New Development Bank of BRICS countries. He has served as a chairman for Infosys and as the non-executive chairman for ICICI Bank. What is so sweet, Kamath Saab, is that in this lovely group, I see a large group of friends sitting together with the title NDB Shanghai. It is so touching to see all of them there. He has also held very important positions in ICICI Bank, India's largest private bank, as managing director and CEO. What is interesting is that he has also been an independent director for several companies, Lupin, Schamberger, to just name a few. Mr. Kamath was born in Mangalore, and his mother tongue is Konkani. And here's a sweet trivia. During his wonderful stint in Shanghai, he had entrusted me upon the task of forming a Konkani association. And I can see here all members of that wonderful small Konkani association also present here. So to our Konkan and to our Konkani association, great to have all friends here. Mr. Kamath has also had a wonderful, very successful stint with the ADB, Asian Development Bank in Manila. He was actually ADB's representative in several boards representing ADB's interest. Needless to say, or regardless to say, Mr. Kamath has been a member of governing boards for several educational institutes: Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, Indian School of Business, National Institute of Bank Management. The list is long. Couple of awards which epitomizes what this person is, and we have got a lot of his subordinates, his colleagues, his from ICICI Bank. And when I mention these awards, I'm sure a lot of heads will nod in acceptance. One of the very interesting award he got was Most E-Savvy CEO amongst Asian banks. The Asian Banker Journal of Singapore gave him this award. Best CEO for innovative HR practices. This was the award given to him by the World HRD Congress. Asian Business Leader of the Year was an award conferred to him by CNBC Asia. Businessman of the Year by Forbes Asia. Padma Bhushan. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, let us all welcome Shri K.V. Kamath. The reason why we have Mr. Kamath here is simple. Last year, at the start of the COVID crisis in India, Mr. Kamath gave, which I believe was an eye-opening session on how he sees India managing the COVID crisis. Now, I think we can all agree with a fair degree of certainty that we are on the verge of getting over the COVID crisis. COVID probably will stay with us, but industry has bounced back. Markets are at an all-time high. So what is the journey ahead for India, for economics, and probably for the Asian region? So let me not hold you and Mr. Kamath's interaction. Mr. Kamath, over to you, and thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of this wonderful. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Amit. Thank you, Pradyumna. Thank you, Samir. Yes, it's indeed an opportune time to take stock 1 year later. I think I talked about a year back of what was going through our minds when the pandemic hit us and what happened to nations itself and economic policy and actual economy of these countries. So what I'll do today is talk of two things. In that previous year's talk, large part was centered around what I call reset of minds. I'm going to be very brief this time. Just to put in context, I'll talk about that. Then I'll talk about technology, because that's really the departure point from last year. The rise of technology in various forms as a leader to lead into innovation, digitech, digifinance, and its impact on everything that's happening around us. I'll talk about economic recovery, of course, productivity gains that we have seen, the government actions that were taken and RBI action, and what is the end result, at least from an Indian context. We'll talk about what I'd like to call as leading into the future, or leading in the future, because what we have seen in terms of leadership in the years past probably will not work in the years ahead, given the, I would say, the disruption that took place last year, or the step change that took place last year in everything that we do. Finally, I'll just recap on the current scenario, as it were, again, in the Indian context. Very quickly, the research that took place, I used a phrase last time, it happened in the blink of an eye. Indeed, it happened in the blink of an eye. But what I think humanity, everybody around us showed was that receptivity to change also can happen equally fast. And clearly, everyone around us in India and around the globe were receptive to change also at the speed of light, I would say, or in the blink of an eye. There was acceptance of the changes that were needed and going ahead with learning to operate in the new normal. So that happened at blink of an eye. And this happened at all levels. It was very visible. It happened at individual level, where people who had never used technology quickly learned to use technology. You can just note rise in UPI payments in India as an example. It is not all youngsters. It is older people who have never used a UPI payment mode app who learned how to operate and became, I think, fairly adept at that. Manipulating Google Sheets or your Excels. They learned what was important for them to get to terms with this new normal. So at the individual level, I think a whole lot of changes happened at the corporate level. At the corporate level, what the end result in India was that you squeezed out a whole, I would say, degree of productivity gain, which you never thought possible. And we'll maybe touch upon it later. My assessment is that overall across industry, productivity gain is in probably the 20% or so, some 25%, some industries 10%, but about 20% as an average in terms of productivity gain was taken within 6 months. Within 6 months through innovation, through improvement in product and processes, these sort of gains. And this is very visible in the profitability improvement at the EBITDA level, for example, we have seen in corporate India. So at the corporate level, at the individual level, and indeed at the government level, and we'll talk about the government also a little later. And in all this, I will sum up this first part of resets because this was the past and has happened, and we now can celebrate it. It, I think, basically was lateral thought at its day. Everybody started thinking laterally, embracing change, and we went on. Clearly, one thing stands out in this process that has happened over the last 2 or 3 or 4 quarters is the rise of technology. Technology in everything that we do. And I saw, this is nothing original, I saw what somebody very cleverly used 5 Ds to picture today's technological impact. And that is demographic, democratic, dematerialized, digital, and disruptive. So I'll repeat it: demographic, democratic, dematerialized, digital, disruptive. Demographic is very interesting. We all know what it is, the rise of youth. And we will have a few stories about the rise of youth in a little while. Democratic, not as in democratic societies, but democratic in everything that we do. For example, look at the global phone connectivity. The phone is no longer a phone. It does several things. Look at the growth in data availability and affordability, both available and affordability. So suddenly it became democratic in terms of everybody equal in front of technology. Everybody is equal in front of technology. We should say everybody is equal in front of law. I can now say everybody is equal in front of technology. Just if you are in India, you can imagine every household help that you have, anybody that you see has today a data connected phone. And he is leveraging that to his good and to his family's good, which is, I think, something delightful to see. And this will only improve as this momentum catches on, because we have to remind ourselves that this is 1 year old. It became democratic only in the last 1 year when data costs became so low that they became the lowest in the world in India. Dematerialized, again, you look at an iPhone, you can say it's dematerialized, or any other phone that you use today, because it does 10 jobs. So all those other jobs have, or devices have become basically materialized into one device which you have in your hand. Work from home, I think, is a dematerialized state. Use of a Uber is a dematerialized state. Going and staying in an Airbnb is a dematerialized state. So, so I think the whole process of dematerialization is very clear when we look around us at all these things. Digital and disruptive, I think we all understand what it is. That was what the whole of last year was, those productivity gains that we got, and all the things that we were able to eke out of the digital, the rise of digital as it were, everything digital as it were. In India, if you were to ask the layman what denotes the digital to you, I'm sure the answer is payments. The payment space has completely become, I would say, made a big leap into the digital space. Keeping with the theme, I will now expand it into what I would call the digital super cycle. And the digital super cycle, as I say, is to me, and anybody in India, an outcome of the last one. It was there was a digital cycle, but suddenly it has become a digital super cycle. The sheer pace of growth and the opportunity it's throwing on. I'll preface it by saying the other day, I was listening to a Niti Aayog discussion, where they mentioned that some 60,000 new enterprises have been created in India in the digital space in the last 2 or 3 years. 60,000 enterprises. Their estimate of direct employment in these was 180,000 people. I think it's a very modest number. 3 people per enterprise. It's going to happen in any case, probably more than that, 180,000. What I thought to myself, and they didn't say this, is we have seen it in the last big wave. That was the white collar wave. That was the tech wave of the 2000s. For every tech job created by either a TCS or an Infosys et al., 4 or 5 new jobs were created. This is, again, a report from CRISIL going back to 2002. But for every tech job, you created 5 jobs. The 5 jobs may not have been full jobs. Somebody employed a driver, somebody fetched tea for the driver, you bought a car, somebody put gas into your car, somebody repaired your car, so on and so forth. But when you look at it, 4 or 5 jobs per job created. I would think that in the digital super cycle, same has happened, but we have not counted it as yet. I'm sure in another 3 months, they will count it. So if 180,000 direct jobs were created, I dare say that you have got 4 or 5 times that number of jobs created as linkage effect jobs in this. So we're talking of probably somewhere near 1 million jobs created out of already with what I call baby steps. These are not big steps. So when people ask, where is the tomorrow's job coming from? It is very visible. It is, now we are in a very sweet spot. It is the rise of the digital super cycle. If we can create 1 million sort of jobs easily, imagine with a little more effort and a little more drive, the number of jobs we can create. Clearly. So that, I think I preface it by saying everything is changing at a very rapid pace in this space, the digital super cycle in that space. Along with this positive side, you're going to have disruptions. And maybe I'll talk of a few disruptions here, because that's going to stay with us. And that's going to be a theme as we go along, not today, just my talk, but in our lives. Disruptions in everything that we do. And I always use the technology costs in NDB as an example. I don't know. When I left, we probably spent less than $1 million or a little more than $1 million, in that ballpark range. The annual spend also probably a few $100,000. We used mail, which was free, called Zoho. We used an HR software called Bamboo HR, $8,000 or $10,000, which I believe serves well. We use NetSuite as our ERP platform, 100,000 and odd. And so many other things which virtually today are plug and play and virtually come free to you. I'm putting this in context because these same tools are available with the disruptors. The disruptors are coming at you with the whole set of tools virtually free. When I look back at the disruption, say, an ICICI Bank brought in 1997, 98, we could not afford a mainframe, and all our competitors had mainframe. So David and Goliath, what did we use? We used a Super Mini. We basically used not even a Super Mini. We used Sun Microsystems, I would say, box. It was probably, in terms of cost, 1/4 the cost of a Super Mini of those days, and then scaled up and met our needs. And of course, it was a fraction of the cost of a mainframe. Because we went in there because we could not afford a mainframe. And today's the new competitor is going in to the goodies that he gets in a bag free, because it's available there and he gets it free and he can utilize it. So disruption is happening because of costs which have gone to virtually free. And the other disruptor is coming along there, helping these guys along, is AI, artificial intelligence. So where the pace of change, whereas we said in Moore's law, every 2 years we would basically grow at a square in terms of capability of the chip or the computing ability, and the cost would drop the same proportion. We are talking of AI, which where I think doubling is happening every three and a half months or so. The last time I talked to Vishal Sikka is at 3.4 months or so. You can imagine in a year, what is the multiple that you will have? I think it's somewhere around 8 or 10x will be your growth in a year. Now, it's growing faster than what Moore's law was, I would say, growing at its peak. And I used to earlier say Moore's law is alive and well, but I think with doubling every 3.4 months, it is outpacing Moore's law. And so you can clearly see, we used to talk about the players in China, those colleagues who are in China or have worked in China, have seen the payment system disruption there, whether it was through WeChat Pay or Ali Pay, or then the rise of the online asset managers. And we used to wonder, how can these guys grow so fast? And to put it in context to my friends from China and friends in India, take the growth of Ping An. Ping An was an insurer. But once Ping An repositioned itself as a technology company about 4 years back, in 1 year, its market cap went up from $80 billion to $180 billion. I have not tracked Ping An in the last 1.5 years, but I'm talking of 3 or 4 years back. Just that repositioning. And they were potent competitors. They went into the AMC business, collected money online. They went into a whole lot of technology initiatives. What I'm saying is, these are all about to happen in the Indian context, or already in some areas already happened. And with the rise of technology in China, I was yesterday listening to somebody whom I respect, Sharma from Morgan Stanley, Ruchir. Ruchir mentioned basically that 40% of Chinese economy today is digital. Now, 40% of Indian economy is not digital today, because we have really gone on to the global the digital path only a year and a half back. But that means that you got a long runway. And with the cheaper technology, freer access, I would think we'll accelerate at a dramatically fast pace. And the digital will come into India already as in the payment space, in other spaces at a pace that which probably we can't even imagine today. Of course, you have new startups which are gaining momentum every day, as it were, and they are already causing disruption. I talked to you about the employment impact of that 60,000 or so companies that have come up. But let's talk about the disruption impact of these companies. And I'll probably narrate 3 broad themes or 3 stories, as it were. The first is that I would think the most visible disruption in India will be the financial sector. And my last 1.5 years closely observing things, this is becoming very clear. And one area it's already happened, and everybody can look at it, and that is broking. In securities transactions or broking, the new brokers, people like to call them the discount brokers. I don't know anything discount about it. They are leveraging appropriate technology as of today, maybe giving you a few goodies in the bargain. But the incumbent leader who had undisputed market leadership for 20 years was disrupted in 2 quarters. In 2 quarters, a company called Zerodha was able to disrupt the incumbent leader. And the next 2 quarters, 4 or 5 others have actually gone ahead. Now, the incumbent still is profitable, the others may not be profitable, or all others may not be profitable. And I'm sure the incumbent will reposition and so on. But at one level, I think several incumbents in the broking space are going to be probably no more in a quick order as a rise of the next one, again, the China story, if you look at, are the asset managers. Globally, 70-80% of asset management has now become passive. So basically, you have an ETF or an index fund, and you invest into it. You are paying 10 basis points for that. And for the privilege of somebody managing your money and not giving you a return higher than what the ETFs give you, you will end up paying 1.5 to 2%. And who's daft enough to do that? So that business is, and if I look at between last year and this year, I see almost 70 to 100 offerings on ETFs and index funds in India. So any investor, I won't use the word savvy, any investor, if he wants to differentiate a little, he can pick an index and recast his portfolio rather than give it out to a fund manager to manage. And he saves 1.5%. And who loses 1.5%? The asset manager. And the asset manager's task is clearly today or can be done by the broker, because if you want to buy index funds, you will buy it through the broker. You don't need to necessarily go through the asset manager. So all sorts of things are happening. And I saw the other day a platform called Small Case in India, smallcase.com. You can build your own index. You can build your own portfolio. There's a Bangalore-based company, the platform company. It is not selling you the what funds to buy or things like that, but basically offering a service. Of course, just now I don't think lay users are using it, but very quickly securities companies, brokers have gotten into it. They are making their own small cases. So they are making their own index as it were. And this is going head to head with an asset management company. I would think, so it became brokers and then asset managers. Then you go on to the story of general insurance. Yesterday, I was talking to somebody who set up a digital insurance company, online only, nothing, no physical. He is 1/3 the size of the two market leaders in 3 years. That's no mean achievement. These are sort of jumps that don't happen in the real world, but it looks unreal because that's the pace at which technology is disrupting. Now, life insurance probably a little more protected, banking a little more protected, but you have a wave coming on from all sides, so-called payment banks, so-called small finance banks, NBFCs wanting to be banks. Bajaj Finance basically saying, as an NBFC, I could do a whole lot of things that a bank could do, and I agree with them. And probably they can do it better. So I think we have to be prepared for some big-time disruption in the financial services business. The story here was the disruption has already happened as far as to start with broking and then heading on to asset management. Next brief story I want to talk about is what is a very interesting story. Just yesterday, I saw a news item and then the story got built around it. The story was very simple. The news item said that this will come as a shock to almost all of you, that e-challans in Maharashtra. E-chalan is for traffic violation, chalaning you. There are 1 million challans out there, e-challans, not chalan, cop stopping you and writing a ticket. E-chalan, 1 million. Amit, can you believe this? 1 million in Maharashtra. And of course, people are merely not paying. So they basically said that if you don't pay by this weekend, next weekend, all your cases are in court. Go to the Lok Adalat and pay. 1 week, 5 crores was collected. 400 crores is the total bill. It's still to be collected. Then they said, we are going to stop you at every red light where you have stopped your car and come and collect. Yesterday, I was driving to Lonavala at Chembur. I could see a guy, 2-3 cops with something what looked like a basic phone and entering things. So my friend who was driving said, hey, what's happening? These guys seem to be chalaning for something. Maybe seatbelt. I said, no. They are basically checking your number whether you have paid your e-chalan, or they are asking you to pull aside and pay it there and then. So all this is basically, you don't need to do that physically. They are doing it to put, I would say, fear of God into you that, look, we are serious. If you're not paid, we're going to drag you to court. If you're not paid, we'll even collect it on the street. But you better pay online. You've got the suvidha of paying online. But that part, to me, that you could chalan 1 million people on e-chalan is, without stopping you, is a game changer. So I would think that I salute the government for doing this, and this is going to be a complete game changer as we go along. As we are driving back from the Mumbai-Pune Expressway, I found basically digital things flashing, checking your speed. So clearly, whoever is speeding is going to get a chalan. This is a number reader. It can read your number and send you calculate the speed and send you it. So the last one, I think to me is the most interesting. What I call the new consumer story. The new consumer story is basically the story around what I would call any layperson today can become a consumer, and basically has avenues using the digital opportunity to create money, wealth, whatever way you want to put it. I always use a very interesting story that how many of you, I do not know, watch YouTube just to understand what's happening in the content creation space? I'm not talking about influencers. They will become influencers or not later on. Content creation. Guys who go out and put a 10-minute content. This is my life today. I woke up, I had idli, I had paratha, my mom scolded me, whatever. And typically, you and I would think that, hey, who's interested in this? When you go and go deep into it, you will find that there are millions of people interested. I'll give you one name. The character, I think, very smart, called Saurav Joshi. He comes from a small village in Haryana called Hansi, Hansi. No pavements, no roads, no sewage. His home a year back did not have plaster. All right. He started blogging. New blogger. Content creator, not a blogger. He has 7 million subscribers today. He posts daily. He has 4 million views daily. And if I'm sure you guys know a broad idea how much when YouTube writes advertisements on your blog, what is the payment? Per million views, it's $500. So arithmetic is simple. This young boy, he's 21 today. He was 20 last year. Earns 4 million views, earns $2,000 a day. 365 days he is blogging. His annual earnings are $750,000. All right, I wish him well. Now comes the interesting part. He was living in this house unplastered. He had a cycle. Then he buys a motorcycle. Then he buys a second motorcycle. Then he buys a small car. Now he's got a Krishna. Then a few months back, he relocates from Haryana to Uttarakhand. He goes to a place called Haldwani. He's very proud. He's living in a gated community. There's a Darban at the entrance. And he says, this is all basically where my subscribers can come. The Darban can call me. I can go out and meet him there rather than they come to inside the society and disturb others. He's putting it very modestly. But the fact is that he's living in a gated community. Putting it in our terminology. Every room in this new home is air conditioned. He's got a gaming room now. He's got gadgets and things like that. I'm not again saying that he did this. What is he doing? He's consuming. He's the new consumer. And he's probably not employing 5 people because I said 4 he's probably employing 10 people, part-time jobs, full-time jobs, fixing air conditioners, fixing that, fixing this. And there are tens of thousands of bloggers like this in every single area that you could think of. And this guy came from a small village. There are village bloggers. Again, I'm sure you have heard of this blog called the Village Cooking Channel. 10 to 15 days after putting that, this guy is daily 4 million. Village Cooking Channel gets a few crore views. This is a half dozen people, who, this is basically a Tamil Nadu-based blog. They go into a village, put 4 bricks, start cooking there, get firewood and start cooking there, mass cooking for 50 people and so on and so forth. And the views are in crores. Then there are, of course, city dwellers blogging on every single thing you can imagine. Lifestyle to high-end lifestyle to low-end lifestyle. There are brickmakers. There's a brickmaker in Maharashtra called Rokde. Rokde is making bricks. The typical homemade, the field-made bricks. And he's blogging. And he last time I had seen he had 50 or 60,000 views. I have not tracked him frequently. But what I'm saying is opportunity is there at every doorstep, be it in the village or. And to me, I celebrate that success. But more importantly, or equally importantly, I think they are the new consumer. And I ask my industry friends, when you say that the demand in the last 2 quarters was pent-up demand, can you define what was pent-up? You guys, the pent-up demand is not what the guy didn't buy because there was COVID. The pent-up demand is the guy could not afford, now can afford. His demand was also pent-up. He had aspirations but could not be met. Now his aspirations are suddenly met. And you see this boom in sales that is happening. And like I said, this Saurav Joshi is from a cycle to a motorcycle to a second motorcycle to a small car to a big car and to a fully air-conditioned home. And you've got all sorts of people. There are food bloggers. There are music bloggers. Amit likes music. You should, I don't know whether you've heard of a young lady called Maithili Thakur. She and her 2 brothers. Similarly, has gone through, I think, one home change. All the home is now completely air-conditioned, completely fitted out, and so on, Lucknow-based. So, you may now say that is Mr. Kamath only spending time in this. This is what I call my go-to-sleep moment. The last half an hour before I go to sleep, I basically go on YouTube and spend, if it's a 10-minute blog, I spend maybe 45 seconds just to see what has happened. What is the person blogging about? What are the comments that are coming about? Are people fed up? Are people giving gali or encouraging and so on? But I'm sure in due course, these guys will become influencers and so on. But that's a different universe. I'm talking of these guys, their hard effort, earning money and moving ahead. So I would think the digital super cycle story in India will be driven in many ways, the e-challan way, the content creator way, the banking disruption way, and of course, myriad things in between. You can blame me to say that I probably caught 3 things which were interesting to me. But there are so many other things mundane that are happening. I don't know whether you guys followed yesterday or day before, this company called Freshworks, listed in NASDAQ, and I tracked the first pop. The first pop was it went up 60 or 70%. I didn't see where it ended up. But a small team produced software which was off the shelf, as it were. And I went to the US and did well in Silicon Valley and listed the company. I'm sure this is just the start of a long trail of people going on. Quickly, I think I'll need to speed up a little bit. Economic recovery. A year back, we were all in a dull mood. I think now Reserve Bank is quite clear. All commentators are clear. 10% plus economic growth. I think that should happen for this year. I don't see any challenges. Despite the second wave having hit us, we seem to have done pretty well quarter on quarter or year on previous year also. I think both the government and the Reserve Bank acted very fast. The economy reset very quickly. Corporate India learned how to do business in this new environment. That they probably can today work with 25% less staff, more efficiency, better, I would say, experience for the consumer because of the digital experience, and so on and so forth. And productivity gains, I mentioned, about 20%. Interest rates are stable. There's ample liquidity in the system. I'll put that number in context in a moment. The bad debt scenario, far better than estimated. Last July, government asked me to, Reserve Bank asked me to work on this committee to look at rescheduling large loans. We estimated at that time that the total amount that will come up for rescheduling was 7.5 lakh crores. That was the estimate that we had. Not just our estimate. This was talking to the rating agencies, banks, industry bodies, and so on. 7.5 lakh crores. In the event, 1 year later, the total amount that came up was 45,000 crores. I salute industry. They came back on their own. They did not need a helping hand. And they have reset it, along with, of course, the government providing a small helping hand, good liquidity, low interest rates, and so on. And companies are completely deleveraged. When you go to a bank today, basic woe is that nobody wants money. The large companies don't want money. Only retail probably will drive this sort of a spend going forward. And to me, the economy is firing on all cylinders. There are pain points. I won't go too deep into it. I think at the lay individual level who are self-employed, there is pain. At if you had productivity gains of 28% or so, and this came out large part of it through people becoming redundant, there is pain. So there is pain, and I'm sure the government will give a helping hand to ease this pain and very quickly put these people back onto and that's, I think, happening even as we talk. And the government pain, which we had thought will be very, very severe, is much lesser than what we had anticipated. Tax collections are robust. Just yesterday, I think they mentioned that tax collections are almost 50% more than what it was last year. And I saw a number for the year past, that is 2019. Even there, we are probably 30% higher than what it was in 2019. So the tax collections are back. And of course, the GST numbers itself are apparent. 2 years back, probably this time 80 or 90,000 crores. We're talking of 140,000 crores a month as the GST collection. So tax collections are robust. I mentioned liquidity is ample. Statement from Reserve Bank a few days back that the states and centers put together are currently having around 4.5 lakh crores of liquidity with them. There is collections were better, probably amount didn't get spent, and so on. The states and center. You heard the national monetization pipeline, 6 lakh crore is what is talked of. And I had a friend who just now sent me a snap report on this. He thinks that after drilling down, 3 lakh crores is readily doable without delay. And the most interesting number was which came about 2 days back, because they have now actioned on the bad bank. And the total amount that will go to the bad bank is 2 lakh crores, not more than that. Everybody had thought it will be a very large number. And these are 100% provided loans. So moment it is set up, basically there will be an inflow of cash into the banks. And probably they won't have to go to the market again for borrowing for quite a. The interesting thing was, out of 2 lakh crores, I think less than 20,000 crores is State Bank of India. Just now there was a discussion I was watching, and the interviewer was asking the State Bank, how come you are almost 40% of the system, but your bad debts are 10% of the system? So virtually said, is that a bad thing? Isn't it a good thing? Of course, indeed it's a good thing. The interviewer should not have asked that question. Clearly, the pain there will be very quickly resolved as we go along. So what I'm saying is, India is prepared for the future. I heard the Prime Minister had said that the 25-year runway, I fully endorse that. I would call it a sustainability super cycle is coming in. There's a digital super cycle. Sustainable growth. By sustainability, I mean Yeah, you can have sustainability as a growth opportunity also, the ESG opportunity. But here I talk, is sustainable growth possible in India for a very long period of time? Going back, if you were looking at China, maybe what was there 15, 20 years back, where they grew at double digits, 10 to 15% for a long period. I think that is a path we are just getting on to. RBI has been very supportive. I mentioned RBI earlier, both in keeping liquidity low, high and interest rates low. Exchange rates are stable. And government is doing a whole lot of things in making compliances meaningful. That again is something that the Prime Minister himself is leading, as it were. Leading into the future. So in the economic context, I have no question that we will grow at 10% or so as we go along. Leading into the future, I think the CEO has to be a completely different, of a different mind than what he was in the past. I would think any CEO who will survive or whose company will survive has to be what I'd call a tech architect. He basically has to understand how to architect tech. He need not be a techie. He need not be the guy giving the tech solution, but he needs to understand how to architect technology. He needs to understand how to work with young people, because the consumer is going to be young. The evolving technology, it is the young people who will drive this. So you need to have basically a young platform around you, which will drive you. And that is, in a way, at times alien to what used to happen in the past, where merit and seniority went hand in hand. Today, probably the CEO will have to look at new solutions, new equations as we go along. And of course, disruption is going to be a way of life. We cannot avoid it. I put this in a phrase, at an individual level, each one of us need to not be obsolete. So we will have to learn how we can not become obsolete, which means that we devote time to ourselves, to skilling ourselves and using things so that we are not obsolete tomorrow. And of course, key is continuous reskilling, not annually, but probably on a continuous basis. And you will see this in terms of individual growth. You will see new types of leaders coming up who can adapt to this. Because otherwise, the company itself will go down. So boards and succession plans will have to factor this in. And historically, I used to say that every 10 years there's a churn. If you look at the top 30 companies, whether in India or abroad, go by market cap, a simple index, half of them would churn every 10 years. I would think that going forward, probably every 5 years you will see a churn happen. The pace at which churn will happen is faster. Just take a name, take Bajaj Finance. Look at the market cap increase of Bajaj Finance over the last 1 year. Today, they are probably, in terms of the banking and financial services industry, probably at the third or fourth spot, which they were probably at the 50th spot a year back in terms of market cap. They are doing some good things, some interesting things. And I took that as an exception, one name. But there will be many, many Bajaj Finances coming up in a myriad industries, not just in financial services. They will drive this. Finally, a few concluding points on the current scenario. The vaccine rollout is robust, and I think it's real. You're now looking at 1 crore a day as a feasible thing. Last 7 days, running average was almost 9 million a day, give or take 1 crore a day. I was listening to Poonawalla and somebody yesterday. I think they are now at full production capacity. So the sustainable basis over 1 crore is what we can roll out on a daily basis. All in production efforts on that front have been addressed. I would think the informal sector, the self-employed, and some organized sector players, as I mentioned earlier, have pain. That will be worked out as we go along. The rest of the economy is all, I think, on a good wicket, as it were. We have weathered the second storm, both in terms of its impact and in terms of its impact on the economy. I think fairly well. And with the vaccine rollout and a little more care, we should be, in that front, we should be safe. Economic front, we are safe. And on handling the pandemic front, at this point in time, looks to be we are safe. Finally, I think companies have learned over the last year many, many things. I summarized some of them, and they have truly repositioned themselves. companies have also learned that costs will all have to be made variable. You cannot afford a fixed cost anymore. Costs will have to be made variable. Technology is now mainstream. Technology is not an IT function. It is mainstream into everything that you do. And I think they also have learned a lesson that shareholders do not pay salaries. It's customers who do. So you better produce and you better have that customer if you expect to get paid, as it were. And finally, very finally, we need to the very phrase that came up at the beginning of the pandemic, which was put in again by our Honorable Prime Minister very beautifully, that how do you calibrate lives and livelihood? I think that in today's context, in the context of disruptions and everything that's happening, I think we need to learn how do we calibrate lives and livelihood individually at the corporate level and so on. Thank you. I think maybe 5 minutes over time, but
no,
thank you very much.
This was precise, and a big round of applause. I'm sure everybody will agree. I would request you to please have some water. You've been speaking, and it's really been a flow of information for us. Mr. Kamath, can we have a few questions being answered by you? I know you're short of time. Would you have?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So perfect. Then first question comes in from our good friend Shrikant Aradhya, a fellow Shanghaiker, and something which I think is interest to you, the workforce. He's saying that with small and medium-sized corporations today, the challenge is that a lot of the workforce is actually at home and sometimes even kind of feeling challenged to come back to work. They also find it a little bit inconvenient. But the effects of not having the face-to-face meetings and interactions is showing, especially on the new joiners, the trainees. What innovative steps do come to your mind to address this problem of offline and direct work for the new joiners, especially?
I think that's very, very important, and because we are into uncharted tech, right? Since what is the psychological impact on a person not coming into office, we don't know. After we have understood what is the efficiency gain and so on, now it comes down to the workforce that is actually needed to work, and what is the impact of them working from office. I would think the only way is what we say, use the word calibrate. And if I look at the financial services business, they are calibrating by trying to see can you schedule people coming into office, not all together, because that also addresses that worry that your employee may have, that there could be another wave, that I could be vulnerable if I travel. Like a city like Mumbai, travel is not easy. Trains are not still operational for everybody, and so on and so forth. So I think the only solution that I can think of is calibrate and then allow. One other thing that you could probably look at is on the shop floor, manufacturing India has typically allowed 75% to come in. I would think there's some interesting story there. I have not done more work, but all of you coming from diverse backgrounds can study. My assessment is that there were more people sick who were at home and in the white collar category in an organization than who were in the blue collar and who were in office. My sense is that the blue collar and the companies followed better protocols than the white collar and people who are staying at homes. So if you take a bank in India or any other service type of company, roughly 10% of the people are recognized to have had COVID. So that's a pretty large number. And so whereas in corporate India, when you ask them, the manufacturing India, when you ask them, the number is much lower. So I can only deduce that there are better protocols. Maybe all of us across need to understand those protocols, implement them, and slowly calibrate people's entry into the workforce again.
Sure.
Beyond a point, I think work from home may or may not be tenable. A proportion, yes, but not as a complete
solution. Pradyumna, you're muted.
Sorry. Can you hear me, Amit, now?
Yeah. Loud and clear.
So, Mr. Kamath, I wanted to build on what you just said about the difference between the service industry and the manufacturing industry. There is obviously a dichotomy here, both in terms of the impact of COVID, not only on the health of the workers, but also digitalization. So there is a question from our dear friend Manish Kulkarni, who joins us from Pune and is with Pro MFG Media. His question is, while we see a lot of disruption happening in the service sector with digitalization, how do you see the impact of digitalization in the Indian manufacturing industry?
Yeah, very simple answer, Manish, because I don't think the productivity gains that we are seeing would have happened without digital disruption there. Digital disruption could be a very simple thing like new technology being introduced where there was no technology, or where there was technology, improved technology being introduced, better processes being introduced, digital or otherwise. And the combination of this has given rise to these 20 to 25% productivity gains. And again, on the shop floor, it could be what I described just now. But every company then has to engage in commerce. There is a whole slew of changes that have happened, which have given rise to a whole new set of gains. Like, for example, your working capital management is much better. Your straight through payments, not straight through getting stuff into your factory floor. Those are going through. Again, cash in transit cash is cut out. So you are able to improve your financial throughput and the efficiency there remarkably. So put together, there's an impact on every single corporate in the way they are acting and are able to manage this system.
Correct. A very interesting question, sir, comes from Himanshu. And this is another sector which you have always been focusing on, the service sector. He's saying that your point on services automations are amazing. We are seeing disruption across the service industry. However, most of these disruptors are not profitable. And this is not just in India. It starts all the way to the top. He has cited the example of Uber. So his question is, how do you see these, especially financial service disruptors, continuing to remain viable?
Yeah, very, very, very good point. And maybe I should have touched on this. Next time I will touch on this. The challenge here is they clearly are change agents. And I, in my mind, break it into two parts. And actually, I had a phrase there around which I would have talked about this. And that phrase was, unicorns and decons. There was a line there. I did not talk about it because that would have become a story. But let me tell that story. When I look at it, I break it up into two parts. And the question is Uber a good thing or a bad thing? And I think the answer is very clear. Is Airbnb a good thing or a bad thing? I'm looking at it as better utilization of resource. Airbnb, for example. Uber, again, better utilization of resource. Of course, now it has become a different model. And Zomato, delivery platform in India. So that was talked about. And you had a market expert say that I wouldn't invest in this. So you now have to separate out the valuations that people are putting in, and they are not, making a profit, and the fact that they are also disrupting something traditional. The disconnect is not with their ability to disrupt. I think that's a given. The disconnect that is there in all our minds and should be there for some time, and you raise it rightly, is your valuation justified today? No. I had a flyer from a friend of mine the other day that valuation. This is a US based, I think. There is a company which is making powder and some product out of peas, and he says its market cap is more than the market cap of all the pea production in the world. So it doesn't make sense. So something like you're saying that it can never be. So this is, I think, this will all get corrected. But I would look at, is the underlying core model sustainable, and is it providing value? If it is, the price discovery will happen later. What is now you're saying is artificial price discovery. Now, some of the backers, why is it that they are putting money at higher and higher valuations? Because there are more and more players, and each backer, a set of backers, PE firms who are backing a particular enterprise, think that I can't let my company fail. Let the other guy fail, and the other guy thinks the same way. And this case, all of them are going to get hurt because there is not enough space for all these guys. You have seen it in the dot-com bust in '99. This is going to be worse than that. This is going to be worse than that. On the profitability front, I think, again, cutthroat competition, what is bringing the profitability to what it is. Otherwise, it could have been easily profitable. I remember in the '99 dot-com era, I sat through a seminar where I try to understand how businesses are built. And basically, this is a McKinsey seminar in New York. And I was curious, how do they build a startup? So they explain how, basically components and aggregation, what's happening today, but talked of 20 years back. Then they said, we have to work at speed. I said, why? You have to work at speed because at any given time, there are 200 people with the same idea and only one will succeed. So we have to do it on a 90-day scale. Within 90 days, you can't do it from concept to market, you are dead. Today, what has happened is, so there within 90 days, somebody came up and he was backed and he became the winner. Today, there are probably 90 people who are running parallel with the same product. And the backer for each one thinks that his guy, his horse is going to win. And they are killing each other. So there has to be a leveling, and then there will be a rational price discovery. So, and you are right, somebody is going to be hurt. As long as it is the deep pocket investor, the PE investor, I have no problems. My problem is when this sort of a company lists and it takes the lay investor down, and that's going to happen. That's going to be very painful.
Absolutely.
No, that makes a lot of sense, sir. And we have another very interesting question from Deepak Shinde, our dear friend from Shanghai. He is working with so many industries, but as L&T sourcing head here in China, he has a good view on the economy. His question is, while the government investment has started in a lot of priority sectors, especially in the infrastructure, when and how do you see the investments or capex cycle from the private sectors to accelerate? When will the private sector start to make more and more capital investments? And then second part is, you talked about this digitalization super cycle. How do you see this ESG super cycle taking shape in coming months and years?
Yeah, I think ESG one is an easy one. It's a wave, and it is a positive wave. So we will have to embrace it. And I think even if it's part of the E or S or G, I think it is an excellent wave, and it will be embraced in India. That I think we are very good at doing that, and we will genuinely embrace it, not just because that people are pressing us or shareholders are pressing, but people will genuinely do it. Your infrastructure question and manufacturing question is very interesting. Given that over the last 10 years, people have been badly burnt, whether it is in every area of infrastructure. You start with power, all the sort of things that happen with environment, then with coal mines, telecom, the 2G type of challenges, toll roads, suddenly overruling that you can't collect toll and so on, interferences and so on. So every area of infrastructure has gone into problem. Given that, I am a strong votary that the best person in the infrastructure is the government, and government through an SPV structure, if they do it, look at what the China model, which is what on the road side they have done, and then quickly monetize it, which this new monetizing pipeline is helping them, and then reinvest. At least the implementation risk is over. After that, you sell it off. Once you have implemented, so bear the implementation risk, because you being government, not many people will challenge you. Implement it, and thereafter do what you have to do. So I see that as clearly happening. And then, of course, there will be certain areas where private sector is well equipped. Airports, for example, private sector is doing a brilliant job. Ports, private sector is doing a brilliant job. Where there was, I would think, less of regulatory interference. Other areas, either regulatory or land laws or something comes in which impacts. So let the government do it and hand it over. So that's on one part. Then you have this interesting area, manufacturing. My assessment today is corporate India is almost completely deleveraged. That is the large companies. It was a year and a half back, it was the top 50 companies. Now it is the top 100 companies, heading to the top 200 companies are deleveraged. So when they want to invest, they have enough cash generation to put in and get that investment going. Unlike in the past, where it used to take 4 to 5 years to increase capacity by, let us say, 50% or 60%. Today, you can do it in probably less than 12 months. So you have very small lead times that are required to set up capacity. You have the cash flow to do it, and you do it at quick speed, and you may not increase it by 50%, you do it by 25%. And it becomes easier then. So I would think that the era of very large plants coming up, except in very heavy industries, let's say steel, you cannot say that, today the ideal size of a plant is 2 million tons, but I'll do 200,000. You can't do that. You will have to set up a 2 million ton plant or a 3 million ton plant, then say maybe I'll add some balancing equipment and take it to 50% higher. So those sort of things will become greenfield ventures, but otherwise, by and large, most areas it will be brownfield ventures. That is why you don't see the capex happening. So bankers are waiting, saying that, and sometimes the government is also waiting, saying that we'll wait for corporate India. Corporate India is not going to come back because the model has changed completely. It is now cash flow funded, self cash flow. It is very short duration implementation projects, and preferably brownfield projects.
Excellent. So what we'll do is, there are some very amazing questions. Unfortunately, we don't have the time, but what we will do, and I'm sure Samir, our technical wizard, will share all these questions with you. And whenever you have, not today, but whenever you have free, if you could just share these answers,
Sure.
then we can, of course, revert back with feedback to all our friends. I'll just ask one last question, if you allow me, and then we'll have the vote of thanks. This comes from our dear friend Fani Kiran. Fani ji says that India has been an agrarian economy and labor intensive. How does disruption help the Indian populace at large in employment? And I think he's pretty much talking to what you had spoken about in the smaller villages, in the towns. How is that going to help?
Yeah, I think very, very good question, Fani. What has happened since last year itself, and visibly so, is from the farm, the product is coming to the market. It is cutting out the middleman. Keep aside the farmers' agitation that is happening now. I'm talking of a whole lot of farm produce, whether it's green produce, fruit, vegetables, and so on, is coming in from the farm to the home. Now, I would think that this is clearly value additive. We saw this once earlier, Fani. We saw it when the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana was rolled out in 2002 by Honorable Vajpayee ji. Suddenly, the village became connected to the marketplace, and the farmer got better realization. Village, I would think, started improving as an unit. Now, with technology connection, the farmer without a middleman is able to communicate, maybe through a cooperative, because he may not have the wherewithal to do it himself. But he is also today digitally savvy. And you will see the benefit of this in the next 1 year. I can already seeing it sitting here in the last 1 year, but it will happen more often as we go along. So, for example, Amit would be knowing, it's a company called Sahyadri Farms. It's a company called Talegaon Farms. Today, they are all sending to your home directly.
Exactly.
And I looked up Sahyadri Farms. It's basically a cooperative. It was earlier exporting, and then they directed everything to, not everything, a large part to the domestic market last year. And probably they had to forego exports because they couldn't export. So I would think a whole lot of value add will happen in the villages, which will create jobs. And the whole flow will come in. Funny, the other thing is, this stories that I told you on the YouTube front, where the underlying theme, what I see there is aspiration. And if Mr. A or Mr. B from a village can do it, then Mr. C from the village also thinks on D, C, D, E, F, G up to X, Y, Z, also aspires. And aspiration can do wonders. So I think in village India, these people are lighting that aspiration fire. A year back, even if there was aspiration, these guys could not do anything, the guy who aspired, because he did not have data connectivity. He could not afford data. Today, he can afford data. So I would think that he will look at opportunities coming from different areas, different sides. Now, you can also put it in context. Why do you think is YouTube promoting the guy who comes from Hasi in Haryana? Why is YouTube promoting him? Because without YouTube, see, YouTube is positioning his blog or content and getting those 0 subscribers going up to 7 million. Why? Because they think that that's where the market is. That's where the ads are going to come from. That's where we want the ads. So there are, what I call hidden persuaders and hidden drivers, which are driving you or people towards rural India and the agrarian side. So it's going to be a very interesting milieu in the next 1 year, not next 5 years, next 1 year, as we see this transformation take effect.
Absolutely. I'm sure you'll all agree that I think this was such an amazing 1 hour. Sir, it's been 1 hour, 5 minutes, and I think nobody has moved. Can't thank you enough. But to do that, I've actually invited somebody you know very well, and of course have wonderful memories. Our dear friend Subodh Joshi, a fellow banker. Subodh, if you could unmute yourself and just express your vote of thanks, please. Sabir, you may have to help Subodh. Yeah, perfect.
Thanks, Amit. Hello, Mr. Kamath.
Hi, Subodh.
Hi. Very good evening, morning, and afternoon to all participants who dial into today's amazing session. It gives me an immense pleasure to deliver a vote of thanks for today's Vishwamanthan session. Sir, you spoke at length on the reset of minds, and that reminds me the quote from one of my all-time favorite economists, J.M. Keynes. The difficulty lies not so much in developing new ideas as in escaping from old ones. And that holds so true in today's date, even after almost 80 plus years when J.M. Keynes said this after 1930s Great Depression. The example of growth story which you have quoted, like technology disruptions impacting the financial industry at large, not only in China like asset ledgers, but even like in Bangalore-based smallcase.com, which is even building the indexes. Sir, you have stressed the points on how the improvement in 5 Ds, like demographic, democratic, dematerialized, digital, and disruption, will not only impact the economies across the globe, but also the lives of the common people at large and its multiplier and exponential effect. The most essential factor to economic recovery today is the restoration of confidence. And on that, sir, thanks for sharing your go-to-sleep moments and few ideas from the lot happening around, like Saurabh Joshi's story or even Brickmaker's story here. And those are like the pent-up demands. And it's truly coincides like ideas shape the course of history. And thanks for sharing many game-changing initiatives, sir, which are truly breaking through into the people's day-to-day lives. Sir, I was going through a couple of your interviews, and one of the quote which you said in last year's interview in July on moneycontrol.com, that really resonated with me. And what you elaborated today on the growth story which is happening. And sir, you said that we need to work now, and that demands us to look at the things in a completely different manner. As long as we do not tear permanently a fabric of the economic growth, then the experiments will have to be done by the government. And we truly see that is working today, not only in the government, but government agencies, industry leaders, and all are working together, and which we are seeing that the improvement in the job rates, reduction in the bad debt rates, improvement in the tax collection rates, and sustainable growth opportunities. What else to say? All these examples are extremely positive, sir, and encouraging news for all of us here. Sir, your journey in guiding large organizations in crisis situations earlier on embracing the changes across various sectors and countries are absolutely inspiring to all of us. And we at Vishwamanthan extremely proud today to interact with you. On behalf of Vishwamanthan team here, I would like to say a big thank you for accepting our invite and sharing so many positive events, upcoming disruptions, and various aspiring stories today. Thank you to all participants for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Kamath. We also wish Subodh a very big success. Sir, he's moving to Manila, your favorite city,
congratulations.
on a promotion in Citibank, and Pradyumna is moving to Singapore on a promotion. So our Shanghai team is of course now going more Southeast Asia. But on that note, thank you so much, sir. I know you have another engagement. It was such an amazing thing from all of us. Thank you once again. Thank you.